Hi, and welcome to the third episode in this podcast series on taming fear and anxiety. In this particular episode, um, I would like to discuss the idea of the mind because you can't really figure out what fear is unless we also try to kind of unpack what is this thing called the mind, which which to many of us appears as the seat of what we experience. So, what is your mind? And in this, we will also look a little bit at how it's connected to, the physical brain and its quantum processes, and also this idea of consciousness that's being discussed so much, both the hard and the easy problem of consciousness. But we will look at this a little bit from a biological standpoint and a little bit from a spiritual standpoint, essentially from the idea of non-dualism or Advaita. So, what is your mind? It is a strange question, but perhaps if one is pressed, one might describe it as a part of yourself that makes you who you are. So people may say the mind is a sum total of my dreams, my emotions, my thoughts, my memories, my consciousness, etc., etc. Neuroscientists for a long time have believed, and they probably have evidence, I don't know, that aspects of the mind, where we experience fear or we memory or, everything had like a specific location in the brain. So something like there's a location or a circuit for fear. There's a region like the hippocampus and the others. There's a region for memory and so on and so forth. But we've also learned that the human brain is also a master of deception because what we experience does not necessarily reveal the inner workings of the brain. So, in a way, the mind seems to be like a work in progress, under construction situation of the brain, the body, kind of the body mind apparatus, the body and its physiological processes, the entire apparatus, and also the surrounding world. In every moment, as you see, think, feel, and navigate the world around you, your perception of things is built on all these ingredients, right? So you have these, I would say, three broad ingredients. One is all the signals that we receive from the world outside of us, right? The sensory data, which comes in through, the five sensory equipment that we have. So light or photons hit our retinas, and you experience the lilies, the lotuses, the blooming gardens, the night sky. You have changes in pressure that reach the eardrum, the cochlea, or it reaches the cells on your skin and they become voices, they become hugs of loved ones. Chemicals, molecules travel and arrive at the receptors of your nose or your tongue and are transformed into, aroma, sweetness, spice, etc. I think it still remains unclear what gives us, and by us I mean an organism that's basically a bunch of tightly held molecules in an aggregated chemical system, the apparent sense of subjective experience, also referred to as our sense of personal consciousness, right? So there seems to be, and we can all attest to this personally, it's very subjective. We all strongly feel the existence of an experiencer, right? And what might be that seat of this experiencer in our body? Is there like a location in the brain or somewhere that is like the experiencer, right? We are unable to find any such seat or source within the physical, physiological, biochemical, electrochemical systems which can explain this. It is also unclear how the brain could or is creating such an experience with its processing capacity. If indeed the brain is creating this experience, which is what, which, and the and why is that then? If the brain is creating this experience, why is it then that the same experience is vastly dissimilar to different people? Why is it that I sense that the coffee is too warm, and the same coffee my mother gulps as if it were at room temperature? Why is the redness that I perceive in the roses different than the way my wife perceives the same color? So for example, when we watch a movie, we might experience emotions of anger, grief. Now, some people even cry with the characters on the screen. They feel aroused. And there are several other such experiences. Who it is, or who is it that actually, quote unquote, feels these emotions and experiences? How come mere photons of light, mere pressure, how come mere photons of light that hit my cornea, go through the humor, hit the retina, and how come just mere sound vibrations through my tympanum create electrochemical, biochemical, and other physical changes in my body without my knowledge and somehow control this experience? And why is it that this experience is different for different people, even when the stimuli and the context are identical? Philosophers sometimes refer to this as qualia, probably to indicate the unique quality of each person's subjective experience. So the question is really, is it possible that the mind is really emergent as a consequence of the billions and unimaginable quantum processes of the brain, and the only and there's some kind of a unintended consequence? Mind is an unintended consequence of all these brain processes, which are basically to only regulate, preserve, and protect us. The point I'm trying to say is maybe the brain developed only to protect the organism. That's its primary function. But as the brain evolved, the mind emerged as some kind of an abstract process because of all the thing that's happening within this brain, right? So I want to suggest a hypothesis where the mind that we know for the most part is somehow emergent, but then this idea of consciousness is somehow fundamental, meaning that some people use the word soul and spirit as something that comes into a being, and I don't know, and I don't want to go down that line. But what I want to examine is it possible that the mind is actually part of the body's physiological apparatus and is somehow emergent and maybe misfiring, right? And consciousness is something that's fundamental and was probably there when all of this started, whether it is the Big Bang or whatever started this whole drama. So there are three broad theories that I think um, that go around, which gives rise or which tries to explain this kind of subjectivity to our to our experiences. Number one, that consciousness is also emergent and is a property that is resulting from the interactions of the billions of neurons and their corresponding electrical and chemical signaling. So the idea that consciousness is nothing but the mind, right? The second is that the consciousness is somehow related to the quantum processes of the brain, different from the electrical and chemical signaling. And the third theory is that consciousness is somehow fundamental to the nature of the universe itself, and that it is intrinsic at Big Bang or whatever started this drama. Now, in the previous episode, I've said that we have the subjective experience of feeling separate, of being unique, right? And one quality that is endemic amongst all of us, as I mentioned, is our need to self preserve. All sentient beings express or exhibit the need to self preserve. So if you feel cold, we wear a jacket. You feel hungry, you go looking for food. You perceive some kind of threat, your biochemistry prepares you through the autonomic nervous system to either freeze, flight, fight, etc. So, long story short, all sentient beings exhibit this quality of self preservation. They protect their kith and kin, but that's really an extension of themselves because they share, uh, genetic information. They do everything to procreate, so their legacy lives on. And this self preservation, propagation is evident in complex forms like humans and in also extremely primitive forms of life, right? So, if you look at these three options, right, that consciousness is emergent from some kind of neuronal activity, that consciousness is related to the quantum process, and that consciousness is fundamental. I don't quite understand the quantum processes, so I'm not gonna take a stab at that. But I am intrigued with the theory that consciousness could somehow be fundamental to the nature of the universe, and that all of us and everything around us has come from the same source. Every single life form, animate, inanimate, anything on Earth, or just about anywhere across the known and unknown universes, has come from that same singularity, right? You can call that resulting thing a Big Bang explosion or whatever, but this entire drama, diversity, color, the puzzling phenomena, everything has come from that singularity. Science is chipping away, and someday, several decades or centuries from now, if the human civilization continues to exit, we might have answers. But ancient sages or rishis, I'm familiar with the Indian Hindu tradition, um, who were considered awakened or enlightened beings, have been saying something which I think merits closer attention by the scientists. And what are they saying? They're saying that there is a fundamental supreme consciousness that is all pervasive. They call this the Brahman or the Satchidananda. That creator and creation are not separate, that what you see is really what is, right? That there is no difference between the creator and the creation. The third, that the supreme consciousness is somehow shrouded in some kind of illusion, and that this illusion, also called Maya, blinds us or hijacks our perception, thereby causing misery. Meaning, everything that we perceive gives us uh, knowledge that is not the fabric or the true fabric of reality. So we are caught in some kind of suffering or wrong knowledge, if you will, and that the only way to um, reach that source or abide is kind of some kind of equanimity, right? So basically, what the scriptures are saying, I think, are A, sense control or moderation, B, detachment and thought, C, calmness and equanimity, and four, understanding that the fabric is one, that all of us are somehow connected. We're all like, waves in a large ocean, and that one wave can affect another. So we are some kind of like I don't know, like some kind of a net, and one vibration in one part can affect the vibration in another, just like a large puddle where you disturb one part of the puddle, you can see waves interference at the other part. And all of these great saints, if you will, including people like the Buddha, who spoke about impermanence, or the Mahavira, are all kind of pointing at something similar, that we're all from that same single source, that one source. And I think that this idea and philosophy is actually very profound, maybe a difficult one to grasp. But as we saw earlier, give the, we must give these wise men and visionaries benefit of the doubt because they were simple beings and had no agenda. Yes, they can't show proof or predictability like we expect in science. But then you see, Einstein discovered most of his theories sitting at a desk, barely even going to the lab. And all the theories that he generated and developed, which are the foundations of quantum physics and find applications in all fields from semiconductors and space science, are being proved today, over 100 years later. So, what is to say that these ancient sages from all parts of the world and all cultures were not scientists who were probing the laboratories of the mind and trying to understand and discover the hidden nature of our fabric and reality? We'll go into this a little bit more into the next episode so that once we get a handle of, some kind of a clue, then we can see how we can extinguish or tame fear. I'll see you on the other side.